We all know what happened in 1929, the crash, the panic, the Great Depression. But what if I told you the real story, the one that matters for us right now, isn't the crash itself? It's the warning that almost everyone missed in the years leading up to it. And that same warning sign is flashing again, pointing straight at 2026. History books show us the chaos of 1929, but they skipped the quiet part. The years before the crash weren't filled with fear. They were filled with confidence. People were working harder than ever. Factories were humming. The future looked bright. But beneath the surface, something was wrong. People were working harder, but they were quietly falling behind. The real warning of 1929 wasn't panic, it was denial. A denial that the foundation was cracking while the building still looked strong. Let's step back into the world just before the fall. On paper, everything looked great. Jobs were available. The stock market was climbing to dizzying new heights. Productivity was soaring as new technologies made factories more efficient. And for the first time, credit was expanding, making big purchases like cars and radios accessible to the average family. It seemed like a golden age, but this story isn't about the stock market. It's about households. It's about what was happening at the kitchen table after a long day of work. While productivity was rising, wages for the average worker were not keeping up. The cost of living was slowly but surely inching higher, eating away at paychecks. The prosperity everyone saw on the front page of the newspaper wasn't making its way into the wallets of most people. The system looked healthy, but the people inside it were being stretched thin. And that brings us to the warning most people missed. It wasn't a sudden drop in the stock market or a factory shutting down. It was a subtle shift in how people lived. While their incomes stagnated, their spending didn't. How was that possible? Two things were happening. First, household debt was rising to levels never seen before. People were borrowing to maintain their standard of living. This was the era of explosive growth in installment buying, the original buy now, pay later. Second, and just as important, the national savings rate was dropping. People weren't putting money away for a rainy day because there was nothing left to put away. Every dollar was going toward bills, debt payments, and the rising cost of groceries. The income they earned was no longer enough to cover the cost of living, so debt filled the gap. The system looked healthy, the households were not. The engine of the economy was running on fumes, borrowing from the future to pay for the present. Now, let's draw the parallel to today carefully. This isn't about predicting a crash, it's about recognizing a pattern. In the 1920s, easy credit masked the fact that incomes were weak. It allowed people to keep spending even when their paychecks weren't growing. The risk that used to be held by banks and corporations was shifted onto the shoulders of individual families. The incredible gains from productivity and innovation, they mostly went to the top, not to the workers creating the value. Now look at today. What do we see? Credit cards have replaced savings accounts for millions of people. An unexpected car repair or medical bill doesn't come out of a rainy day fund. It goes on a high-interest credit card. We see the rise of the side hustle, which is often just a second or third job people take not for passion, but to make ends meet because their main job's wages have been frozen for years. The idea of job security and steady raises has been replaced with the gig economy and the constant pressure to find the next source of income. The structure is eerily similar. The pressure on households is building in the same quiet, invisible way. So why does this matter for 2026? The danger isn't necessarily a sudden, dramatic crash like in 1929. The danger is fragility. It's the creation of an economy where the system itself can look fine. GDP is growing. Unemployment is low while the people within it are struggling to stay afloat. The pressure builds invisibly, month after month. Families have less and less of a financial cushion. There's no margin for error. When a shock eventually happens, and a shock always happens, whether it's a health crisis, a geopolitical conflict, or a financial hiccup, there's nothing to absorb the impact. This is the key. Crashes don't break strong households, they expose weak ones. When everyone is living paycheck to paycheck, one small disruption can trigger a cascade of failures. That's the fragility we're talking about. It's the millions of tiny cracks forming under the surface that you can't see until the whole structure is put under stress. Of course, it's important to be balanced. Today is not 1929. We have more safeguards in place. We have deposit insurance for banks, social safety nets, and far more sophisticated data that allows governments and central banks to respond much faster to a crisis. We've learned a lot from the past. But at the same time, the pressure points are different, and in some ways, more intense. Personal debt, especially student loans and credit card debt, is at an all-time high. The percentage of people with any meaningful savings is shockingly low. Meanwhile, fixed costs, things like housing, healthcare, and education have skyrocketed, taking up a much larger portion of income than they did a century ago. So while we have better systemic safeguards, the average household has far less personal margin for error than ever before. This explains that feeling of anxiety so many people have, even when the economy looks good on the news. It's the psychological weight of knowing you're one unexpected bill away from a personal crisis. It's the constant pressure of working harder but feeling like you're treading water. You have no breathing room. You're constantly afraid of falling behind because you're already on the edge. It's the feeling of your paycheck shrinking in real terms because of inflation. It's the frustration of frozen raises while corporate profits soar. It's the exhaustion of working more and more, only to see your savings account stay at zero. That anxiety isn't irrational. It's a logical response to a fragile financial situation. It's your own personal early warning system telling you that something is wrong, even if the experts on TV say everything is fine. And that brings us to the real lesson of 1929. The ultimate warning wasn't the day the market crashed. It was the decade-long lead-up, where the prosperity on the surface was built on the growing debt and stagnating wages of ordinary people. The lesson is this: when households lose their financial margin, the entire system becomes unstable, even if it looks perfectly healthy. The economy is not a spreadsheet. It's a collection of human lives. And when those lives are stretched to their breaking point, the system itself becomes brittle. History doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly does warn us. This isn't about spreading fear. It's about building awareness. When you understand these historical patterns, you can see the world more clearly. You can understand why you feel the way you do, and you can start making choices to build your own personal resilience, regardless of what the broader economy does. It's about taking control of what you can control. If this video helped connect some of the dots for you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content that looks at the big picture. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What feels most similar to today in your own life? Is it the debt, the pressure to work more, or the difficulty in saving? Thanks for watching.